Hey guys, this is Russ Russo. You're checking out Infinite Banter with Mark.
Here it is, another episode of the Infinite Banter Podcast. What is going on? This right here is Mark Jolliffe, also known as DJ Soundwave. Got another episode here. Really excited about this one. Got actor Russ Russo on the show. His new series, Chaser, which is available on Amazon Prime, is out right now. Go check it out. It's 8 episodes. Definitely I encourage everybody out there to go check out the show. And of course, after you hear him on the episode here, that should definitely get you excited to check it out as well. So Russ Russo, star of Chaser, is going to be on the show today. Really looking forward to talking to him. But before we go forward, we always go back. And on the last episode, I had hip-hop artist Azariah on talk about his new project, Intermission 2.0. And here's a flashback to that episode with Azariah here on the Infinite Banter Podcast. Flashback.
On the first intermission, I had production from multiple producers. One thing about me, a lot of projects I drop usually be with like one producer, like the work,
Right.
Me and Quez have done with Young Black and Gifted, or even like me and Laddie, or even, like my man and Najee Jordan from Chicago as well. I've done a couple projects with him where he
Shout
just
out.
produced everything.
Yeah.
Shout out to him, you know what I'm saying? So Intermission 2.0 was kind of the same formula as the first one, where it's multiple producers. It's also I got, features on it too. So it's more like a compilation, but it's like something that I like to do, you know what I'm saying? It was a long time coming, but, I'm glad I finally put it out.
Big up to Azariah for coming on the show last episode. Definitely go check out that one if you've not heard it yet, and check out his new project, Intermission 2.0, available on all platforms. On today's show, speaking of platforms, on Amazon Prime, there's a new sci-fi show called Chaser, starring Russ Russo, and he is on the show today. Originally, we were going to also have the director, Daniel Romer, on the show, but he got sidetracked, so it was just Russ that came on here. On the last episode, I previewed that both would be on, but Russ came on, and we did an interview here we'll be coming to in a second, but we talked about his new show, Chaser, which you can find on Amazon Prime. It's 8 episodes, and I'm going to read you a quick little blurb about what the show is about. Russ Russo, today's guest, plays Eddi Sebastian. He's a video editor whose life is falling apart as he discovers a piece of editing software that enables him to rewind and edit the last 24 hours of his life. Making the most of this newfound power, Eddi ends up on a spiral into a mysterious world. Once trapped in an increasingly nightmarish situation of his own creation, he has to face the ever more complex and compounding effects of his actions and both the subtle and significant changes he's making to the world around him. It's pretty crazy, this concept. There's been a lot of movies and TV shows about time travel or going back and fixing something and making the future right. This one's a little bit different, where you're editing your life on a computer program, but you can only do it 24 hours. You can't do from 3 years ago. So something you screwed up last month, that's too bad. You can't do it. It's already done. But if you screwed up something 10 minutes ago, get on that program and re-edit. Make that life better. So this is a really cool concept. I really can't wait to talk to Russ about it and bring that to you guys here. Maybe I should go back and re-edit this podcast, because I think I might have screwed up already. So, which I will do. It's not as action-packed when I'm re-editing this podcast as it is for Russ Russo's character Eddi in the Chaser series. So stay tuned. Russ Russo is here. We're going to talk about Chaser and much, much more. Also, on today's episode, I'm going to bring back Infinite Torture. I haven't done one of these since December, when I reviewed with Tony O.T., we talked about UHF. So it's time to bring it back. So in this rendition of Infinite Torture, I'll be reviewing the movie The Crow. I haven't seen it before. Looking forward to talking about it. So stay tuned. The Crow is part of Infinite Torture. Or was it torture? Is it torture? Is it garbage? What is it? We don't know. We'll find out. I'm going to talk about it later on after we talk to Russ Russo here. Stay tuned for that later on in the show. This is the Infinite Banter Podcast. You can find it on all platforms. Rate and review the show on Podchaser, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Check out the Spotify polls and the playlist. You can find the show on YouTube. Just type in Infinite Banter Podcast. And, of course, you can check out the show on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Infinite Banter Podcast. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Russ Russo is here. We're going to talk about Chaser and much, much more. But before we do anything, the show never begins until the one and only, the King from Queens, DMC. He gets on, he says this, and the show starts.
Yo, what's up? This is me, DMC, the K-I-N-G, the greatest MC in history. And right now, you're listening to Infinite Banter, because we will banter on forever, because this is the only place for all of y'all to ever be. I be Infinite Banter.
You're tuned into the Infinite Banter Podcast. I'm Mark Jolliff, and I'm excited to be joined by my guest. He is involved in the new acclaimed series Chaser, available now on Amazon Prime Video. Welcome to the show, actor Russ Russo, who stars in the new series Chaser. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Mark. How you doing, man?
Good, man. This is exciting. I just binge-watched the show yesterday, so I'm all caught up. I'm ready to go, and this is an incredible piece of work that you guys put together, you and Daniel Romer, who's the director and writer. Talk about the concept and the idea of how long this has been in the works, and of course when it actually came together.
Yeah, this is like a half a decade in the making, from conceptualizing. Daniel Romer, of course, the writer, director, creator, conceptualized it based off a short film that he had previously done 15 years earlier, and finally wanted to see it come to fruition in sort of long form. I think the casting process took about a year. Filming took about 35 days. Pickup shoots another couple weeks with that, and then we were in the editing portion of it. And it was funny because in the editing portion of it, that's when it became a series. That's when Daniel Romer realized he had so much that he had shot that it wasn't going to be palatable in like a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie. So he and his then wife, Susanna Hammond, decided to whiteboard it and come up with a limited series. And when that happened, they realized all along, hey, this probably should have been a series from the jump.
Right.
So
yeah, it kind of plays like 8 short films as opposed to, it's not your typical storytelling. You know, it's not like A to B linear, you know, and basically because of the premise, you know, it doesn't have to be told that way. But it definitely felt like 8 short films you could jump in and check out each one and see. And I really love how that element, because each one is a different story and things change and come back and things change on a dime. You talk about that idea too of just having, you know, story changes, you know, so suddenly in the script, and then of course in the final project.
Yeah, that's right. Because, you know, Eddi Sebastian, my character, he has the ability to edit his life for a period of 24 hours. And if you're given that kind of power, I mean, what would you really do with it?
Right.
For Eddi, you know, he just he's madly in love with you know, this actress Annabelle Reich, and his form of re-editing is just to see how closer he could get to her, and then things go a little haywire.
Right.
After that.
He's kind of an awkward genius. Like when I'm watching it, that table scene in the first episode where they're sitting together and, you know, he's just kind of got the finger thing. It's hilarious, by the way. I don't know if that was your idea, but I was cracking up. You just right off the bat, you could tell this dude he's a genius. He's talented, but it's a little socially awkward. Something's not quite right. How hard was that for you? Are you too cool for that? I'm like, I'm a cool dude. I can't play this kind of guy. Or is this, you have a little bit of that awkwardness in you?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all do. And, you know, Phil Hall, great writer of the Encyclopedia of Independent Cinema. He told me 15 years ago, he said, you know, he was a writer, a contributor for Film Threat at the time. And he wrote this article calling me Film Threat's indie actor to watch, you know, back then. And he said, you play a lot of outsiders. And that's what I like. And that's why he wrote the contributory story. And I realized, you know, Eddi's an outsider, but he's trying to be an insider. And
well, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, you could see that throughout the whole series. Yeah.
So I think that was my way in, is that, you know, I think we all feel like outsiders at some point in our life, and so that wasn't hard to imagine some of the socially awkward things that could come from that, you know, that positioning.
Well, the guard character and even Annabelle to a point, they're kind of dangling this whole like union job, and, you know, you want to be in the business and you've got to come with us to do this, you know, this new documentary we want to film out in Ohio. And it's almost like this idea, like if you don't do it, if you're not on board, you know, you're never going to get in, you're never going to make money. And of course, Eddi's got money problems and beyond other things.
That's
too.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And, you know, Daniel Romer he's just a great advocate for this story. I know in meeting him, there were a lot of things, about Daniel as well that I pulled from in order to create Eddi Sebastian. I mean, Daniel has been a longtime editor as well. And so I think he wrote a story that was sort of close to him, although, Eddie's a little different. He still has certain mannerisms that I was able to kind of pull from Daniel and put into Eddi. And I we're very thankful for that, because I think when somebody's a contributing writer or a creator, they're not writing something that's far off from, they may think they are at the time, but it's not that far off from them.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah. Because Daniel, obviously, he's an editor, he's a producer. This is very close to home for him, I'm sure.
It is. And it's hard for him to imagine that. We discussed that. He's like, oh, I don't see it. I don't really, see Eddi too much in myself, but it's certain parts. Just like I pull parts from myself. I'm pulling parts from myself. I'm pulling parts from, upon meeting Daniel, but I had created the character for a month, when I got the role to the time we started to film it. I'm doing preparation work, and I had prepared this stutter because it was in the script. And then day one, we were shooting like the first scene, and I had to lose the stutter. And it's so funny because there's a part where he's on the phone with Hal for the first time. That was one of the first scenes we shot, and it was majorly stuttering. It's kept in the thing, but you don't see him as stuttery throughout the rest of the series. And that was just because, we had shot that, and it was like, okay, we're going to dial this down a little bit. I see this is what you've created, but we're going to dial this down a little bit. And I thought that was quite interesting. And that's when I started going, okay, if we're dialing this down, I started finding Eddi throughout the 2, 3, 4 days of, the first 2, 3, 4 days of filming, and finally kind of locked that character right around then. But it's a process. Right. And the process was actually while filming, which is interesting.
Well, it makes sense too, because, well, first of all, he's on a phone call, with what he thinks is like help service for his editing software. I could see why you might be a little nervous and stuttering then. But as you're saying, in the process of the show, Eddi's character kind of gets a little more confidence. He's got some money. He's got the nice car and everything. He might get the girl or has, maybe, we'll find out. I don't want to spoil too much, but I think that maybe also plays into it. Like maybe that stuttering goes away because he's actually more assured of himself.
That's right. And that again, I credit to Daniel Romer, because in the editing process, he must have found something with that, where, hey, as we're telling this story, I can see he's getting a little bit more confident, and it plays well for the character. Right. Or maybe it was just during his directing process, because it must have been somewhat intuitive, because I just don't remember going back to that stuttering thing. And I remember telling I called a friend of mine after day one of filming, and I was like, oh, well, so I built this stutter, man. And I started doing it, and the director scrapped it. And he was like, oh, my, wow, how embarrassing was that? I was like, no, it actually worked out pretty
there
nice,
you go.
scrapping it. So yeah.
I think in the long run, it worked out pretty well. But I guess if you're driving your family and friends crazy, becoming this character over a period of time, and then you scrapped it, like, well, who's that weirdo you were acting like for? I mean, you're still a weirdo, but a different kind of weirdo.
That guy. Yeah.
But
I'd say absolutely.
But another aspect of it too is like, so Eddi is, for everybody listening, he's a video editor. Do you have any knowledge or experience doing that yourself? Was that hard to kind of get into the nuance? Obviously, Daniel, who directed and everything, he knows all that stuff, but was that more harder for you to kind of get into the mind of somebody who would be editing film?
No, because when I got there, Daniel was right on showing me his timelines and showing me, how to do it. And he had been doing it since like Adobe Final Cut Pro, and since like the first incarnation of that. So it had been a lot of years. So he was getting me right acclimated to that as a job, showing me everything that I needed to know there, so that I felt comfortable with that. And funny enough, I've opened up an acting school in the last several years, and part of the school is when we film these videos, I'm now editing them together for my students.
Oh, wow.
So I'm now through iMovie and CapCut. I'm now a full-fledged editor for myself in some ways.
There you go.
So it wasn't until a couple of years later, but yeah, now I'm doing it on a regular basis every week, constantly editing for my students.
That's crazy. I didn't think about it. Yeah, it's on film. You doing this, and now you're actually you're doing it in real life. So it's not that far fetched for you to be doing. And I'm sure they're all neurotic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people. I mean, this is similar but very different. I edit podcasts and I edit audio, so sometimes I'll get in, to the nuance of it and go crazy. Have you noticed some film editors that are a little bit like Eddi? Is Eddi kind of an outliner, or is he normal?
Well, I must be a bit like Eddi because when the drink goes down the wrong.
There you go. You got to rewind it. You got to go back to your software now and edit back so that you're not doing that.
Oh my God, I got to rewind that out a little bit. Maybe we can cut that. Maybe we can cut that out. My God, I went down the wrong tube.
No worries.
I was breathing and drinking, and so I guess breathing took over the drinking.
There you go. That's how it works, right?
All right, got that out. I got that out. Yeah, so re-edit it for 24 hours, and maybe we can.
Yeah. The whole premise of the show, everybody listening, he's got 24 hours to change things and go back and forth, but he needs a signal. That's the key. You need a Wi-Fi signal.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And obviously that causes hijinks too, because there's some places even in our everyday lives where you just don't get as strong a signal, and if you are under a time constraint, my God, it's gonna cause some wacky problems. So yeah,
especially in Ohio. Was it
that happens there?
Mansfield, Ohio doesn't sound like a place that's got the greatest, infrastructure, maybe, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah, my gosh, a very, very small town. I don't know if I've even been to a smaller town. People there are incredible, but the Wi-Fi signal, not so much. so yeah.
I wanted to ask also, the color yellow seems very prevalent throughout the series, and it seems like it caught on to me as a viewer, maybe like the third or fourth episode. You got the car. I saw you had yellow shoes, there's yellow lights, yellow shirt. Were you aware of that? Yeah. Or was that more something that after you saw it, you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of yellow in here. Any idea on how, and that's probably more of a question for Daniel, but.
Yeah, completely unconscious thought pattern for Daniel. He told me the story after the fact in that he had created something 15 years ago where his character, when he was in his happiness, when he was in his happy place, the color scheme he was letting wardrobe and art directors know that it should be yellow, and wasn't conscious about it on this shoot, but still kind of pulled that color scheme into any time it's in Eddi's happy place, So when you see those colors, when you see the shirt, the shoes, the car, it's all when he's in his faux confidence, is his happy place.
There you go. Yeah, yellow is one of those colors you think. I was trying to think of okay, I mean, I was probably reading too much into it. Caution signs, things like that. I'm like, does it mean something bad's happening? So I was like, okay, what is yellow? And now that you say that, it actually makes more sense that I could see, where you're coming from with the yellow being his happy place, right? When he's filming and editing.
And honestly, if you're finding a caution with that as an audience member, that's an incredible thing to read. And I think that's intuitive as well. An incredible thing to read into, because I think that there are parts of this that certainly have the message that, be careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're getting all of these really material things in life, as Eddi is, in this series, that you have to kind of proceed with a little bit of caution. I don't think that materialism for material's sake and is necessarily a great thing. And although Eddi pursues this and thinks that this is what he wants for his life, and he's pursuing this sort of perfection that we some of us really kind of attempt to attain. It's not wise to go after these things. Yeah.
So speaking of material things, that car is awesome. How was that to be in that car?
Yeah.
The yellow car with the black stripe.
And that was, oh my God, I love that. I love the car, and I love that day because it was a complete drone day. So he was driving the car all over Mansfield, Ohio, with a drone kind of following all day long, and that was just a fun day to shoot. And coincidentally enough, it was Daniel's mother and stepmother that owned the car, and so we got it from her. She was definitely at the the video village, like waiting upon its arrival.
Right.
So yeah,
don't crash it, please. It's the family car.
It's the family car. So
there's the pressure.
It was that aspect. Yeah.
Yeah,
and a fun day of shooting.
I bet. It looked like even from the scenes, and I would imagine in Mansfield, Ohio, there's not a lot of street lights and congested traffic, so you probably had a nice little path to drive.
Oh my God. Yeah. They're just and just from some of the drone shots. I mean, those are supposed to be suburban streets in Mansfield, and you don't even see a car for miles when as they ascend up with the drone. I'm like,
right.
Where are all the cars here? So yeah, you don't see that too much. Like, I'm from the New York, New Jersey area, and man,
also that's not what you're used to.
This is not what I'm used to at all. It's bumper to bumper here. I live near the Jersey Shore, and it's just bumper to bumper all day, especially this time of the year.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was telling you earlier, I'm in the Chicago area, and it's all we do is drive in busy streets and potholes, and because of the snow. Although we haven't had much snow the last couple of years, but generally the streets are garbage right now because of all the salt. But right now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can imagine. The streets of Chicago. I've been there a couple times. It's the real deal, man. It's a real deal. You're in that traffic. You're in that. Beautiful city though.
The summer's the best time to come here. The food, and, the weather's decent.
Yep.
I was just kind of joking. We haven't had any snow. I mean, we had one snowstorm for the entire winter, which is bizarre. So read into that what you will. Yeah. But I kind of miss some of the old cold weather stuff, but it's all good.
Yeah.
As long as we got our pizza and our hot dogs, we're fine. All that stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God, the hot dogs are out of control with the tomato and the pickle. My God.
There you go.
Yeah, I love it.
Man.
I love the Chicago dog.
But I think everybody listening can definitely relate to Eddi and relate with the premise. If there's a point in your time of your day where just something went wrong and haywire, you could go back. Now, of course, the flip side of that is like if you don't have the signal, which Eddi had a problem with once or twice, like you can't reverse and change things. Or if it gets into the wrong hands, like Gar. Just talk about that concept too. Of like, you got to have somebody who's going to maybe turn this into the opposite. Not for Eddi's benefit, right?
Yeah, and you have to have that antithesis, and that antagonist, and that was Gar Madden, and masterfully played by Daniel DeWeldon. He's from the Actor Studio. That's a legendary actor studio. Marlon Brando, James Dean, that's where he got his training, and still, I mean, I think he's a lifetime member of that studio. So and meeting him, I knew I was going to have somebody to really, really bounce things off of, and really go through the character's emotions with. But funny enough, the nicest guy, the sweetest guy,
because I hate him watching it.
Right, but watching it, you would think the opposite. But no, the nicest guy. He had the biggest smile upon greeting me. When we first arrived there together, and we had a fun time off set, but on set it's just like, oof, man, that's yeah. So he goes full with it, as do I.
Right.
I mean, what are you gonna do? You gotta be those people for that amount of time.
There you go. I'm sure there's a big dynamic to that where obviously the person you're playing is definitely people hopefully realize that when they see you on the street, you're not Eddi. Even though you played him really well. It's like
it's funny. I do have a few neighbors that know that that I had done this series, and they'll call out like Eddi Sebastian.
There you go. See,
as I'm getting into my car in the morning, so I'm like, oh man,
that's awesome. That's awesome. And then this is considered a sci-fi show. I would say it's got some drama elements to it and some other aspects too. But are you a sci-fi fan? I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. I noticed the lightsaber you're playing with at the end of the series there, and there's the HAL reference, of course, and Running Man. Talk about the sci-fi elements and how much of a fan are you of that genre? I'm
a huge fan. I think Daniel Romer is as well, but I don't think he initially intended it to be science fiction.
Right.
I think he was looking more in lines with like a thriller. So he was looking at in the thriller aspects of it, and then I think it just kind of because of what people perceived to be a sort of pseudo time travel,
Right.
then, it kind of, the label kind of stuck at the end of it. But as far as science fiction, I mean, I'm a old head when it comes to the Twilight Zone.
Oh, there you
I've watched
go.
every episode. Yeah. And Star Wars, obviously. And weirdly enough, I kind of grew up like right as Return of the Jedi was coming out. Like that was a huge moment for me to go to the theater with my family to watch. Yeah, that particular one.
I grew up with Tales from the Dark Side and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So definitely
cool.
all those kind of stories definitely fit. And everybody listening, if you're a fan of that kind of work and those kind of shows, you'll definitely get a kick out of seeing Chaser. And, kind of wrap it up here. The series has gotten a lot of acclaim and a lot of recognition. Just talk about the gratification for you and the cast and the crew, just like, the recognition you guys have received for this series.
Yeah, it's amazing because I didn't even have, I have two daughters, 2.5 and 4 years old now. I didn't even have them when we began this process of filming this, and just to be able to see that it's gone far and wide, and that it's in the UK as well, and,
right.
It's so even it being here and then being overseas as well. It's been tremendous. Like I said, having neighbors, having neighbors call out Eddi Sebastian is just the wildest thing. So it's been incredible to see people respond to it and really enjoy it.
Right. And what you've got coming up next, any future projects you want to promote, and where can people find you on, like, say, Instagram or Facebook or anything like that?
Yeah, so Instagram, TikTok, actor Russ Russo. A couple projects coming up, but I can't really say anything. Sometimes they get renamed and retitled and things, and then they're in that contract process or the financing stages, and you don't want to you don't want to blow the deal kind of thing.
There you go.
But funny enough, Buffalo 8, the studio behind Chaser, is attached to one of them. So
that's great.
So so it's nice that they're like, okay, we're gonna do another project together, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. And not to spoil anything, but I have a feeling we might see more of Chaser. I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah. I would love that. I would love that as well.
Yeah, everybody listening, it's on Amazon Prime. It's there right now. You could download the whole series. It's $10. I mean, come on, easy. Go get it. Check out Russ. Great work with it. And just looking forward to seeing more projects with you, and everybody listening. Go check out the show. And I know you, just like I said, you're just really excited about the series, and I'm sure you're just loving getting all this recognition for it.
Very cool. Very cool.
Thanks, Russ, for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And everybody listening, make sure you go check out the new series, Chaser, on Amazon Prime Video. Thanks, man. Appreciate you, Russ.
Thank you, Mark.
Big thanks to Russ Russo for coming on the show. Everybody out there, make sure you go check out Chaser on Amazon Prime. Definitely check it out. It's only 8 episodes. They're pretty short. They're about 20, 25 minutes long, so you can binge through it pretty quick. He had brought up seeing Return of the Jedi when he was a kid, made me think of my earliest memory of that movie too, because the first time I saw that movie was in the theater. But I remember it's the first movie I really remember having an anticipation to go see. I probably brought this up on here before, but I remember all day in school just looking at the clock, knowing that I was going to go see Return of the Jedi later on that night, and I was super pumped. It was such a monumental movie at the time for me as a kid and a big Star Wars fan. So when he said that, it definitely made me think of that time too, sitting in class. I just have a memory looking at the clock, knowing that I was about to get the hell out of there and go watch Return of the Jedi. So big up to Russ Russo, and definitely a fan of sci-fi. I need to get around to watching Dune. I haven't seen any of these Dune movies, and I keep hearing how good they are, and that Star Wars ripped it off, which I'm not sure. Somebody could tell me if that's true or not. I've heard people say that. So that might be a sci-fi thing that I need to get into, because I haven't seen any of them. I know almost nothing about it. I remember the one from the 80s vaguely, but I never read any of the books. I haven't seen any of the 2 new movies that have come out, so I'm kind of curious. It wouldn't be an infinite torture thing, because I'm not against seeing it. I just haven't had a chance to check it out yet. But maybe down the line I'll check out Dune. But once again, thanks to Russ Russo, and make sure you go check out Chaser on Amazon Prime. Stay tuned. We're about to do some infinite torture.
Hey guys, this is Irony Singleton, and you are listening to Infinite Banter with my man, Mark Jolliffe.
May I have your attention, please?
Infinite torture.
People think I didn't watch the movie. I remember the movie.
No, of course you did. Of course.
You know what I mean?
So you
can't call something bad without actually paying attention to it.
I do that pretty much all the time, so I disagree.
you're a terrible person.
Yeah, it was fucking ridiculous.
There you go.
But,
That's the way you sum it up.
Yeah, complete garbage.
Cool, Kim. You're making me feel like the Grinch because I had all this hate in my heart for Vanilla Ice all these years. 30-something years, and now
I'm just warming you up to him, like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, well, maybe wasn't that. Let me go listen to Ice. Let me go watch the movie. What was it, the Vanilla Ice? What's that Vanilla Ice movie at?
Cool as Ice or something.
You know what it's called, because you went and seen it. You seen it. You went and seen it. You know what it's called. You know what it's called.
I'm going to delete this. This whole thing's getting deleted.
Not only do you know what it's called, you was there opening day, all right?
Cut it out. Yeah, instead of the Star Wars poster, I really have Cool as Ice.
Yeah, with the motorcycle and the whole shit, yo.
So you seen it too?
Hell yeah. Twice.
You got the Blu-ray and the special director's cut.
Hell yeah, I do. And I'm trying to run into it so I can get my copy autographed, you heard?
Get out of here.
Complete garbage.
Infinite torture.
What's wrong with you, Mark?
It's time once again for Infinite Torture, the segment where I make myself watch something that I've never seen before or had an outside interest in or somebody suggested, something to that effect. And with this edition of Infinite Torture, I watched the movie The Crow, and I've never seen it before. You know, I've always had some sort of like outside interest, I guess, but I really don't have an answer as to why I've never seen this movie. I guess the easy answer is it just never come across my path. I've never been handed a VHS tape, right? This is 30 years ago, so yeah, VHS tapes are still the thing back in 94, or a DVD. I've never flipped on USA or TNT and this thing has popped up. Like, I've never seen it. It just has never come across my path. I've never had a reason to watch it. And I did mention in the last episode, there might be kind of this like morbid idea that I didn't want to watch a movie where the main star essentially was killed during the filming of it. I guess I didn't even know, was it filmed completely? Was the movie done in a way where you could still watch it, where it wasn't tainted or ruined or, you know, not worth watching because the main star didn't get to finish it? You know, I didn't know all the details of it behind the scenes. So I guess it just kind of, it came and it went, as did I. So I just didn't care. But lately, I've been on this Bruce Lee kick, pun intended. I watched a ton of his movies recently, and I was thinking, like, you know what? His kid was an up-and-coming star, just like Bruce Lee was. You know, if you go back a little bit, Enter the Dragon is what put Bruce Lee on the map internationally. And then he passed away before the movie even came out, so he never got to see, you know, what that movie did for his name and how he could have grown even further. And there's some eerie similarities here because Brandon Lee was on the come up. He was going to do The Crow and become this big major star. And obviously he didn't live to see the movie come out. He didn't get to, you know, have the success of a career that he probably would have had. That's what it seems like people are saying when I'm reading about this movie, that he was going to be the next big thing, the next big action star. So there's a lot of similarities between him and his dad. And as I said, I was definitely watching a lot of Bruce Lee flicks. And I'm like, let me give this thing a chance. First of all, the problem with any of these things I try to watch is I got to be able to find it. It's got to be on a platform that I'm not paying money to do. So I was able to find it on Paramount Plus. I believe it's also on Amazon Prime, places like that. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But yeah, definitely this is probably the first movie where I was a little more expectations were thought of before I even pressed play on this thing. So let me just get right into it. Generally, the movies I watch are universally bad, and I know that they're going to be bad, and I'm going to crap all over them. And this one, I had some outside expectations that it actually could be decent, and I might not hate it. So let's get into it. The Crow came out in 1994, so it's 30-year anniversary, starring Brandon Lee, as you all know, who passed away in the filming of this with a prop gun that was used incorrectly or, you know, loaded wrong, or I don't know the whole details of that. Very eerie of what happened to Alec Baldwin, where he's filmed this movie called Rust, and somebody died on the set of that because of a gun being used improperly or loaded, you know, whatever. I don't know the details of this stuff, but very crazy that this kind of thing still happens in movies. Now, I'd only seen Brandon Lee in one other thing before this. It's a movie with Dolph Lundgren called Showdown in Little Tokyo. And the only reason I watched that, this is the only connection that this has to this podcast. On an other Infinite Torture segment I did a couple years back, I watched Bloodsport, that Van Damme movie. The only way I could find that damn movie was I had to go to the library and get this DVD set. It had 4 movies on it. It was Showdown in Little Tokyo, Rumble in the Bronx, the Jackie Chan movie, and I honestly don't remember what the 4th movie was. but I got it for Bloodsport, and I had it for 2 weeks. I'm like, let me watch the rest of these movies. So I did watch Rumble in the Bronx. I did watch Showdown in Little Tokyo. Whatever that fourth movie was, either I didn't have time or I just didn't care because I don't even remember what it was. So I have seen Brandon Lee before, and I was like, man, this guy's, he's good looking. He's got the moves. He could do the action stuff. And, of course, his dad was Bruce Lee, so there's a lot going for him. He seemed like a guy whose star was definitely aligned to go up into orbit. And being a wrestling fan, there's a wrestler named Sting who definitely took his whole look from this movie. He's got the white and black paint and everything. So you could see that The Crow did have some influence outside of Hollywood. People in wrestling were definitely gravitating towards this character. And while I'm watching it feels very 90s. It has that grunge look. It's raining all the time. There's a lot of that grunge alternative music playing throughout. Brandon Lee's character was in a band. So it's very Seattle 90s grunge. It definitely feels like that era. I felt like I should have been wearing a flannel shirt and just sitting around with long hair after playing a Stone Temple Pilots CD or something and watching this thing. I was pretty hyped to see early on in the movie that Ernie Hudson was in this. And he's kind of like the Commissioner Gordon of this movie. He's just a regular cop, I guess, but he's the only one who seems to understand that the Crow is doing something good, and the rest of the police force thinks he's a vigilante, who's a guy they got to bring in. There's a lot of Batman undertones here. It's a dark city. It's always raining. He's always at the top of buildings looking down and stuff. And his only friends or allies are a kid and a police chief. So there you go. But yeah, Ernie Hudson, this dude is one of the great actors. So really cool to see him in there. There's a scene, I'm going to go on a little tangent here, where Ernie Hudson's character and this little kid, this kid I guess was a friend of Brandon Lee's character. They're in I don't want to call it a bar, but it looks like a bar. They're eating food, and he gets a hot dog, and he puts ketchup on it. And I know that Chicago people are all against it. I'm going to put it out there right now. I put ketchup on my damn hot dog. I don't give a shit that my birth certificate says I was born in Chicago. I don't know what the big deal is. I'll never understand it. It's a hot dog. It's not steak. You put whatever you want on it. These rules are ridiculous. I don't give a damn. I'll put ketchup on there all the time. Every time. Every hot dog I eat has ketchup on it. What? Come at me, Chicago people, with your stupid rules. Who gives a shit? It's a hot dog. Whatever. It's not like I'm putting peanut butter on it or mayonnaise. It's ketchup. I never understood that whole thing. I get it, but I don't get it. Salute to you, Ernie Hudson. Do your damn thing. Put ketchup on there. That's where it belongs. So basically, the Brandon Lee character dies. His soon-to-be wife, I guess they just got engaged. They both die because his band of goons come into their apartment and terrorize them, and then they die. Brandon Lee's character comes out of the grave, I guess for a good cause, because this crow starts making sounds on his gravestone, and he's like, you got to go fight these guys. Come back up. Put on his makeup and grab a guitar. You got to go kill some bad guys. I mentioned the 90s feel again. There's a kid on a skateboard. There's an STP song playing. So yes, this is very 90s grunge. Just to bring back the whole Bruce Lee connection here. So Brandon Lee was 28 when he filmed this movie. Bruce Lee was 32 when he did Enter the Dragon and then passed away. So both of these guys, very close in age, very young, passing away before their movies that kind of put them on the map internationally. Passed away at a very young age, 28 and 32. That's just, you see those numbers, that's just insane. Brandon Lee's character goes back to the apartment, which is, the top floor of this kind of old looking building, and nothing's been done with it. Nobody's cleaned it up. Nobody's taken out the furniture or the dressers or anything. Nobody else has moved in. It's just kind of there. All his stuff is still there. And then they cut to a scene where the goons are at this bar, and one of them is drinking a shot with a bullet in it. And I guess the other guys are deciding if they're going to do it too. And I think that's not recommended. I recommend hot dogs with ketchup, but I do not recommend bullets in your shots. I'll definitely go the opposite. At the beginning, it didn't really give a lot of detail about the origin of why he came out the grave and why he has these powers and all that stuff. The assumption is that he's like this kind of ghost that comes back and he's out for vengeance and he'll go back to rest when the job is done. I guess that's what it is without explaining it, but I felt like I could have used a little more background, a little more origin story. They didn't really do too much of it. I felt like it kind of went right to it. Some people probably like that. They just want an action movie without much filler or much backstory. I could have used a little more detail here at the beginning. I wrote down here, Joker makeup with Batman morals. It's very Heath Ledger Joker, by the way, watching Brandon Lee in this makeup. He kind of has that look. I don't know if there's any influence there for the Heath Ledger Joker character later on. And of course, Heath Ledger passed away during the filming of that movie. So, I mean, this is all just too eerie. But it did feel like I was watching if the Joker was a decent dude. I also wrote if Chris Cornell and the Joker formed to create something, this is what they would be. This would be their superhero. I just wrote down, oh shit, Tony Todd. Tony Todd is one of those great horror actors. He's in so many great movies. He was in a remake of Night of the Living Dead. He's in Candyman. He's got that voice that when you hear him, you know it's him. Salute to Tony Todd. Really cool to see him in this movie. And also, Bai Ling is in this. I don't know if I've seen her in anything prior to this movie, in this era. She must have been really young in this, but really cool to see that she is in this as well. This movie is full of, that guy actors. I mean, there's a lot of them. Even the main bad guy, I've seen him in stuff. I just can't remember where I've seen him, but he's been in a bunch of things. He always plays that sort of guy, that mean goon. So then the Brandon Lee character comes back. He goes to his resale shop where his wedding ring is, and he destroys the place looking for this ring. Why he knows it's there, I guess it's just logic to him. Like, of course, it got resold, and so he shows up there, he torches the place, beats the crap out of the guy, and gets his ring. So we fast forward a bit, and we go to a scene where Ernie Hudson's character is in his boxers and a white tee with a cop hat in his own apartment. It looks kind of weird. It's a weird look. And then Brandon Lee's character shows up, and this is kind of where you kind of get the idea what he's here for, what he's back from the grave to do. And Ernie Hudson's character's like the only one who understands where he's coming from because he was there on the scene when all the bad things happened. And he's the only cop that seemed to give a shit. He's the only good cop in the city. But it is a weird look. I don't know why he's walking around with his cop hat and boxers and a white shirt. It's a different kind of look, man. So apparently Brandon Lee's character was in a garage band called the Hangmans. Maybe I shouldn't be calling them a garage band because they actually have a vinyl record in the movie that they play. So maybe they were bigger than a garage band. I wrote down here, did he threaten to go solo? So were these goons that were attacking, were they mad at him because he threatened to go solo and they really liked the band and they didn't want him to break up? They didn't want the Hangmans to break up? Man, why are you going solo? One of the bad guys calls another guy stupid ass hair and takes the car. And I kind of like that. I don't know, I never heard that before, being called that. Hey, you're a stupid ass hair. So he takes this guy's car, but he yells at him, stupid ass hair. So use that. Somebody should bring that out. Like, make that a new thing. Start calling people stupid ass hair. That's probably not going to ever be said ever again. I wrote down also that I could have used a little more makeupless Brandon Lee. Because, I mean, almost all the movies filmed with the makeup on. It's possible some of that was also because his character had more scenes, and since Brandon Lee passed away, they needed to have, and I did read there was that the stuntman took over some of those scenes, so they had to have more makeup stuff. But I could have used more, again, back to that origin thing I said before, a little more before all this bad stuff happened, just regular dude stuff, just so I could relate more to the character that was murdered as opposed to just the guy walking around for vengeance. There is a pretty cool iconic scene, and I've seen this before, where there's like a fire in the street in the shape of a crow. So that was pretty cool. Definitely iconic. I've seen it before in trailers and such. And that car chase scene is pretty good. I mean, that's kind of when the action really kicks in here. So basically, Brandon Lee's character's going back to kill all these goons. He's going one by one, taking them out before he gets to the top of the food chain here. There's a cool scene when Tony Todd's character, he's one of the goons, goes to the grave of the Brandon Lee character. And I just got, Night of the Living Dead vibes immediately when I saw that. The crow starts playing a guitar solo on top of a roof. And I just said, does he play death metal? And then all the goons are together in their, honeycomb hideout or whatever. And I just wrote down Last Goon Supper. Because it's like a long table. They're all kind of sitting there. Kind of had an Untouchables vibe, with De Niro playing Al Capone with the bat behind, and he bashes the head of one of them. This doesn't happen here, but the main villain, he's just kind of walking around. You kind of feel like something might happen, kind of Nino Brownish. But yeah, definitely the Last Goon Supper is going on here. It's like I said, there's this little girl who knew Eric, who's the character Brandon Lee plays, and his girlfriend. She knew them. So these last three goons, they kidnap her, and their whole plot is, they'll draw him out, and then they'll take him down. And they end up in this big church, very cinematic with the church in the background and the setting, and death and life and good and bad and all that stuff. All the symbolism is there. Ernie Hudson character also shows up to, save the day as well. And I thought it was pretty funny that he's there to save a ghost, the Crow, as opposed to Ghostbusters when his whole thing was taking out ghosts. So a little bit of a flip here. I don't know. Maybe that's not something they even thought about, but I thought of it immediately. Like, oh, Ernie Hudson, he's actually saving the ghost this time. Bai Ling and Tony Todd were two of the last three goons left, so they have to fight the Crow before he gets to the main bad guy. And I didn't write down the main bad guy's name. You know who I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. So Bai Ling's eye gets taken out. Yikes. I have a thing with eyes. If I see a horror movie and there's like an eye scene or something, it's very hard for me to watch. It definitely makes me cringe. And I just wrote Bird's Eye because, he's the Crow. This movie is definitely a PSA to quit smoking because Ernie Hudson's character keeps smoking. And he talks about how he needs to stop smoking, but he's always smoking. And that's very 90s grunge, right? All those guys I knew in college and high school during that era, they all smoked. And, I still hung out with some of them, even though I never did. But it was just something that people did. They smoked, and you didn't think anything was that weird about it. But yeah, it definitely felt like a PSA for not smoking this movie. I wrote down Crow of the Rings because he's got to get this damn ring that he wanted to propose to his girlfriend with. So that ring was very important to him. And I get it. It's probably like the symbol, the connection between him and his murdered fiancée. So I get that. And I've never seen Lord of the Rings. So isn't there a ring? Isn't there something with rings in that movie? I've never seen them damn movies. So last but not least, the movie's based on a comic book. And I looked it up, and most of the movie was filmed before he died. There were a couple scenes I had to do with the stuntman and stuff. But for the most part, the movie was completed, short of a few things I had to add in later. Overall, I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't say it's something I want to, watch 100 times. I don't anticipate, buying a T-shirt or something or buying the soundtrack or anything beyond that. I thought it was a cool movie. I definitely feel like it lives through the test of time, and I'll definitely give it some credit because in the 90s, it was very hard to make these kind of movies other than, like, say, Batman or something. These kind of, like, superhero movies. I mean, now that's all we see are these damn superhero movies. But back then, anything based on a comic book or superhero-type stuff, it was a hard sell because you didn't know if you could really pull it off. But they did a good job, and I would say 30 years later, you could watch this and still feel like it's a movie that's still relevant and still works, and the action scenes still hold up. And you really could see that Brandon Lee was definitely on his way up. So, a tragedy on all sides there. So I'll rank this thing. I usually give it garbage cans. 5 garbage cans means it's like the worst thing of all time. 1 garbage can means it's pretty decent, fairly tolerable. I'm going to give it no garbage cans. This is the first time in history on this segment I've given 0 garbage cans to a movie that I watched. It's probably the best thing I've seen for Infinite Torture. I mean, there's definitely some stuff in there that's kind of stuck in the 90s, with the grunge and all that, but maybe that's also why people love it, because it takes you back to that era. But definitely liked it. I definitely had a good time watching it. And as I said before, you could definitely see that Brandon Lee was on the way up. And really sad, what happened to him. And too bad we never got to see the next level of his stardom that was going to come. But yeah, definitely, I liked it. Everybody out there who's never seen The Crow, I would recommend checking it out. So I'm going to go find my flannel shirts and smoke some cigarettes, grow up my hair, and play some Nirvana and watch The Crow. So it is definitely not torture, and it was not complete garbage.
Complete garbage.
Hi, it's Russell Todd. I want you to check out Infinite Banter. I just did a podcast with Mark, and you'll know me from Friday the 13th Part 2, Chopping Mall, He Knows You're Alone, Another World, the soap opera on NBC, and a few other things. So hope you enjoy it.
Time for you to leave, asshole.
That is Kirk Acevedo telling me it's time to go, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. But before I get out of here, I want to bring up our sponsor, Super 7. I'm a big collector of action figures, and I've got a few figures here of like Bruce Lee and Beastie Boys and Biz Markie, Rocky. Go check them out, super7.com/Infinite Banter Podcast. You go on that link, you'll see all kinds of cool stuff on there. They've got G.I. Joe figures. They just released a Salt and Pepper combo pack. So definitely go check them out. And if you buy anything from that link, the show here gets a kickback. The show being me. So go do that. Check them out. I have so many figures from there that I'm definitely a huge fan. So it's very easy for me to tout what they do and to try to help push traffic to super7.com/Infinite Banter Podcast. Go check them out. There'll be links in all the posts about this. So definitely go check them out. And once again, big thanks to Russ Russo. Really excited to talk to him on the show here. And it's really cool when I get to talk to actors and directors of movies and TV shows that I like. And I didn't know about this show until I was asked to interview Russ, and I couldn't wait to watch it. And once I started watching, I was like, I can't wait to talk to this guy about it. It's such a cool show. And his character, Eddi Sebastian, he's kind of like if you took like a film editor and gave him like Rain Man like qualities. He's very, neurotic and kind of awkward, and you don't really know where he's coming from sometimes. But we all can relate to that because we're all kind of outsiders, like he said in the interview. We're all trying to get inside to where you're supposed to be or where people perceive that you should be in your career or where you are in a job. And being an outsider, sometimes I could definitely relate. And Eddi was definitely a character that when you're watching it, you look at it and you're like, yeah, I could see myself in this guy. I mean, I'm not editing videos, I'm editing audio, but it's very similar. So definitely he knocked it out the park. So big shout out to Russ Russo for coming on the show and what they did with that series, Chaser. So go find it on Amazon Prime. Check it out. Let me know what you think. But this is the Infinite Banter Podcast. We're closing up the show here. Follow it on all platforms. Rate and review on Podchaser and Apple Podcasts. Go on YouTube. Type in Infinite Banter for clips from past guests. Check out the Spotify poll questions and the playlist. Find us on social media at Infinite Banter Podcast. And once again, if you're looking for some nerd stuff, go check out super7.com/Infinite Banter Podcast. So many cool toys on there, and I've been posting a few on my Instagram stories, so definitely check them out. They've gotten a lot of my money over the last year or so. They'll probably get more. All right, that's it from me. Thanks again to Russ Russo. Go check out Chaser on Amazon Prime until I do another one of these. I'm out.
Hey, asshole, get off the road.
Being on the Infinite Banter with my man Mark has been a pleasure.